First of all, the import numbers, which I think, are probably worth ignoring in terms of that upside surprise. There's really very little in the domestic economy that suggests that imports are going to be doing a lot better. So the more interesting story, as you say, is what's happening with exports. And the export number was a little bit disappointing. And actually, that's even more pronounced if we look at it on a month-on-month basis. And I think that's probably the better way to be looking at things. So there was a slowdown. And the important point is that comes off when we've had some weaker data from other respects as well. And in particular, the Caixin PMI this month also weakening. And that's important because, there's no real hard evidence of this, I think, but there's a general feeling that this probably is a better sense of what's happening among SMEs and also a better capturing what's happening with the export side of the economy. Why does this matter? Because until now, the export sector really has been the big support for the economy. Property market has been very weak. There's been a pickup in consumption, but that hasn't been big enough to offset what's happening with property. And so when we look at the economy overall, there's been this sort of muddling through over the course of the last 18 months. But if the export sector does now start to weaken, that threatens where we've been over the course of the last 18 months, both with the economy and also with markets. And I think that's the significance of the data today.
There was an interesting report about how the Chinese tech companies like Baidu and Huawei are front-loading and really just stockpiling up on the AI chips from Samsung Electronics. Is that what gave import number a nice lift here, perhaps?
It could be. So we don't get the detailed data for another week or so, and then we'll have a much clearer idea what happened. And I mean, I think, again, if you just look at what's happening with the domestic economy, particularly in terms of construction, it's very difficult to see why there would be a big revival in imports here. And actually, again, if we look at a month-on-month basis, instead of that year-on-year number, there's very little change in imports in July. So I don't think that's something that is particularly significant for the economy. I don't think we should read very much into what happened with imports in July. And again, I think for me, at least, the much bigger takeaway and the much more important thing to think about where the economy goes from here is really where exports are going. And obviously that's important, not just from where we've had with the data over the course of the last couple of months, but also in the context of what we're seeing now in the rest of the world and this increased volatility and also the increased uncertainty about where the US economy is going. And as much as, tariffs and other things have reduced the direct dependence of China's economy on the US, the indirect importance is still very high. And clearly, if the US economy is going to have some troubles, then that's going to get reflected back in Chinese export growth also slowing down.